I don't think I've ever seen her be afraid of anything. And I think that had a tremendous impact on me because, it's a small town mentality with a little bit of Soviet baggage there as well. Most people are really worried about what everybody else will think and whether this is appropriate. And there's very much a tall poppy syndrome. You're trying to just not stick out in any way possible. And that's just not who she was. She didn't have any of that. And I'm really, really grateful for it because I think it made me free in so many ways as a child and later as an adult that I see some of my friends still struggle with and still, fighting for that inner freedom that she just kind of installed in me from a very early age.
Hi, everyone. I'm your host, Dr. Shafer of Talks with Dr. Shafer. I'm so glad you're here. I'm a physician, mom, coach, musician, author, publisher, and I am passionate about helping others reclaim their stories so they can build their most beautiful future and sharing stories just like that here on Talks with Dr. Shafer. Today, we have an inspiring person who has done just that. Someone who felt a pull to do something with her life that wasn't necessarily immediately possible under the current conditions where she was, who then set out to make the conditions happen. Ester Wisnerova is a vocalist, composer, and educator originally from Slovakia, now based in NYC with strong roots overseas in Europe still. Ester is internationally acclaimed for her work in music, performing across the world and sharing her critically acclaimed debut album, Blue Journal. Named in the top 30 under 30 in Forbes Slovakia, Ester Wisnerova has caught international attention for her unique and velvety voice and approach to jazz. Influenced by her mother, a musician at a young age, Ester sang in the church choir starting at age 4 and began piano lessons at age 5 to then fall in love with jazz, a style of music not traditionally taught at the time in Slovakia. Ester Googled how to sing jazz, and since then, Ester has been making her mark on the music industry. Not only is Ester a performer, she co-founded Music Beyond Borders, a jazz and contemporary music education nonprofit in Slovakia, which has served over 150 Slovakian students in just 4 years. She is here today to share the story about how she became a jazz vocalist and educator, and how she is sharing the story of love and perseverance of a mother and daughter with her upcoming album that shares her experience caring for her mother with dementia, and how music continues to be a uniting factor in their loving relationship. Thank you so much, Ester, for being on the show. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you.
Thank you for having me.
And I apologize to Ester. We're having some connection issues. It must be something about that pond in between us, but I'm so excited. She's in Slovakia right now. And despite the time difference and despite a very busy schedule, she's here to share her story generously and lovingly with us. Ester, to start out, so you were first discovered, to give some context for our listeners, by the world on The Voice of Czechoslovakia, a television singing competition, but that's not where your love of music started. Can you share with us how your love of music was developed over time?
That's right. So I come from a small town in the middle of Slovakia, about 20,000 people. I'm there right now. And my mom was a songwriter and piano teacher. So it really came from her. We would make music together. It wasn't something I would even really notice that it's happening. It was just a part of our everyday life. And she was a political singer-songwriter. She would write spiritual music back in the totalitarian regime in Slovakia. And she was persecuted because of her music. Her music was banned. So she was sort of this warrior for free speech and just kind of living true to yourself. And I think it was with her and through her that I discovered that music has this ability to allow, to give safe space to people to, I think, express who they truly are. And with my mom, as a child, we would go to sing in prisons and sing for the elderly. And those were my favorite venues. We also, sang and played in all kinds of other places, but I think it was there where I truly saw the power of music, because I think these people really valued it, maybe a little more than somebody who was just looking for entertainment. And it just seemed like the people who entered the room and the people who left were entirely different humans. Like it was visible on their face. Um, yeah, and so I think through these experiences, I decided to be a musician because I felt like this is what I want to bring to the world. Um, yeah, and then all these competitions and more exposure followed, but the root was really in singing with my mom.
Hmm. How did your mom, one, I want to know what that was like for you as an artist and just as a young person. It's such a formative time when you have a parent who is a dissident, when you have a parent who is part of the pushback in a society where pushback was not acceptable or was only done maybe around a coffee, around the kitchen table at home, not in public, and she was doing so publicly. What impact that did that have on you in those formative years?
Mm. Well, when I was a child, totalitarian regime was no longer present in Slovakia. So it's not like we had to hide, or I would experience in any of what she experienced before. But still, I think her phones would be listened to. There would be a car that was following her down the street. She had all of these experiences, and I think it just made her completely fearless
Hmm.
until the very recent years when things have changed a little bit with her, and we might get to that later. Um, I don't think I've ever seen her be afraid of anything. And I think that had a tremendous impact on me because, it's a small town mentality with a little bit of Soviet baggage there as well. Most
Hmm.
people are really worried about what everybody else will think and whether this is appropriate. And there's very much a tall poppy syndrome. You're trying to just not stick out in any way possible. Um, and that just not who she was. She didn't have any of that. And I'm really, really grateful for it because I think it made me free in so many ways as a child and later as an adult that I see some of my friends still struggle with and still, fighting for that inner freedom that she just kind of installed in me from a very early age.
Esther, that makes me like I'm a mom, and it makes me so proud for your mom of you by connection there in this great big collection of motherhood that I think exists in the world, right? Like
Mm.
once you're a mom, like you feel that love. Many of us feel that love for everyone's child, and when you were talking about that and speaking on that, it really made me think of how, and you mentioned that you've seen some change in recent years with your mother as she's facing the challenge of dementia and she's having cognitive decline. I literally see when I see the videos and pictures of you two together, just the physical likeness of the two of you, and then also the likeness of your expressions, the playfulness on your faces when you're singing together. Um, and it just makes me think of the beauty of how she taught you and carried you as you were learning from her. And now you're reflecting that back to her. And that's so beautiful. And when I watch you and I read your bio of all the things you're doing and how you, by the way, as we hinted in our introduction, these things were not handed to you and it wasn't like easy. You just went, in your local town and you did these things. No, you were very intentionally building for the future that you now have, and you continue to be so intentional about creating your career and building a life that serves you and your family. I just can't help to think of how proud your mom is of you and everything that you've accomplished, and seeing the woman that you are now.
Thank you. Please don't make me cry on this interview.
I'm already crying, so I'm sorry. I don't want to make you cry, but it's the way that I found you was I was doing my nightly little doom scroll, as I like to do. But for me, I promised myself I do not scroll without a purpose. There's always a purpose behind the scroll. And I love to find inspiring stories. And I just happened, as luck would have it, to come across a video of you and your mother singing Glenn Hansard's song. But you weren't using words because, as you put in the caption, words had left your mother at this stage, but she could still hum along. It was a song that you both knew, and she could still sing in that way with you. And you're both looking at one another, and just the love, just such a beautiful moment. And Falling Slowly is an interesting song too, because it kind of encapsulates all those emotions, happiness, but also, something deeper and more complicated, which is, what relationships are. They're not just happy and joy. They also have these moments where we have to stand by and support one another. I was planning on talking about this later, but we're talking about it now. Let's jump into what you're doing with your more recent work. You have your initial album, Blue Journal, and now there's a transition and focus to really focusing on capturing this experience with your mother and your new album. Can you talk about when you started writing your new album and what that experience has been like for you as an artist?
Yeah, so just to give a little more context, it might be obvious from what I said so far. Me and my mom, we were very close. I'm talking like best friends from both ways. She knew everything about me, and I think I really knew everything about her as well. And she's the person who is behind everything I do with music. And music, is really not just a career for me. It's my life. It's the thing that keeps me going. So when she started disappearing, it was I didn't quite know what even to do with that. She was the person who grounded me my whole life. Yeah, and so the only thing I knew was to sing and play and write about it. And I write a lot of music, and most of it is for me. I don't intend to show it to people, and some of it I feel like I want to share it with the world, and that there is really something that everyone should experience, or I could experience here.
Hmm.
And with these songs, at first I thought it's just for me, but then I started talking more about what would happen to my mom with some friends, and sort of slowly opening the pool more and more. And I was shocked, like, one, by how common dementia is, like how many people deal with it with their parents, with their grandparents, and how few of them talk about it. Even people who I thought were in my closer circles, I just didn't know this is what they're dealing with. And yeah, it's just not something we talk about. And then when I was more open about all of these complex emotions I'm feeling, because the person is still here, but you are losing them in some way. There's the old version of my mom that I miss every day, but I don't quite feel the permission to grieve because she is still here. How can I? It nearly seems immoral to do so. Yeah, that's the truth. That's how I feel. Yeah, so I'm learning to love this new version of her, and learning how to support her. I'm understanding my new role from a daughter and from a friend. I've transitioned to a caretaker. It feels like this big circle of life, and all of these things she used to do with me when I was a kid, now I do with her. I sing her the lullabies she used to sing to me. I encourage her when she's too tired to walk a few steps more. I tell her, you can do it. And I remember exactly how she would say those kinds of things to me. So there's so much there in that experience that just wasn't talked about enough. And so I decided that maybe this music isn't just for me. Maybe it is really for more people to experience, and maybe they would feel seen by it. And so I haven't even released the music yet. I just started posting these videos of me and my mom singing, and I already got an overwhelming response of people saying, you know, this is how I sang with my mom. This is how I sang with my grandfather. Uh, that was the last thing I did with my parents before they passed. So people really have this strong experience with music, and with their parents with dementia. And I'd like for I'd like to bring that to the table. I would love for people to talk about it more, because I think the passing of a parent, it might be so much more certain in our lives than many of the things we could talk about constantly, and they're absolutely not as certain that they will happen one day. So even though it might not be the most joyful experience, I think it's a part of us, and it's good to talk about it.
Absolutely. It's a part of the human experience. And I think when we don't talk about things, that's based out of fear, but then also that fear just grows. Whereas
Mm.
when someone shares with you, my personal experience is when someone shares something similar to what I'm going through, kind of like you said, that experience of, wow, this is a much more common experience than I would have understood and thought. And why are we keeping this silent when sharing these experiences is so beautiful? And I even can see in my mind, because I'm like you, I'm a builder, and what if those videos inspire more people to try to use music to connect? Because we know our memories of music are very strong. They're stored in a different place in our brain, and we may still be able to access that. And so maybe playing that song will help them access a different part of their memory and give you a precious moment, or just give them a happy feeling if they're struggling with anxiety and things of that nature. Are there specific ways, if you feel comfortable sharing, that beyond when you sit and sing together at the piano, are there specific ways that you have been able to use music as a tool as a caregiver with your mom?
Yeah, we pretty much go through the whole day together with music. So, when I wake her up, I play some impressionism piano music that I know she liked. And I think it, encourages her that that day might still be worth going for and living, because I get the sense, I might be wrong. I'm just guessing here. I mean, she doesn't talk to me anymore, but I get the sense that in the morning it's often hard for her to believe that it is still worth it to get out of the bed. But I get the sense that the piano music changes that mindset for her. Yeah, and then as I'm helping her get dressed and get ready, we sing. I sing from the beginning. I come up with songs because she responds to it more. Typically, when I just tell her, put this shirt on or something, she wouldn't do it. But when I sing it, I get her attention, and two, she seems to understand the content somehow a little better as well of my words. Um, yeah, and then we play music. She loves to dance. We still dance together. There's this percussion instrument that I would give her, and she walks around and perfectly in rhythm, by the way, plays it with whatever I put on. Um, yeah, then we watch concerts together. So I would just have her sit down and watch like a classical concert, and she loves it. I mean, her eyes are like glued on the TV. Uh,
Mm.
we sing when we walk outside. When she's tired, I start singing slowly and then slowly build up so she can walk in rhythm with the music. Uh,
Mm.
yeah, there's so much.
That's so beautiful. I love the intentionality behind it. And it really keys into something that's really important, whether we're talking about working with our children or we are talking about working with people who have cognitive decline. the principles all remain the same because we're just dealing with humans, is to try to find their motivation. And so it's really brilliant how you've managed to find motivation. You've also really keyed in on rhythm, right? Which makes so much sense. Like, why do we dance? Well, how we dance is going to be dictated often by the beat, right? Like, we're going to follow the beat. And so that's such a really interesting way to help lend her that structure when she's not able to create it herself at this point in time in her life. Yeah, that's so neat. And it also made me think of, you're just so brilliant. And this is why, when you talk about your career, you mention educator, because clearly education is a big part of what you do, and it motivates you. And like, what do we do when we're out? Let's say we're in Prague and we're walking around, or in Bratislava. Like, if we hear music, what are we going to do? We're going to walk towards the music because something really cool is happening over there, and we don't want to miss it, right? Because that's what music does for us. So I think that's so incredibly beautiful. Can you share with us more about your other programs and how you have taken those experiences with your mom as a young person, when she would bring you into places where there were marginalized members of society and doing that outreach, how you have translated that into your Music Beyond Borders program?
Yeah, so Music Beyond Borders, it doesn't necessarily touch only marginalized members of society. I would say it's for Slovakian musicians who
Mm-hmm.
are in a similar position to me in my teens. So I was very interested in jazz. I loved the music. It's a genre that was prohibited as well in the Soviet era. So obviously my mom was really into it because it was prohibited. And she would show me all of these old records that I really loved. And I kept searching and trying to learn more about it, but there just wasn't really any program. There were very few resources for me at that time. And so I just kind of Googled and looked up, some information, but there was no real like continuity to it. And then I, not to go into my whole story, but I managed to go abroad, to go to the U.S. and study jazz there. But it was quite a journey, and it definitely wasn't just accessible to me in any way, financially as well as uh, based on my knowledge. I mean, just didn't have access to the kind of information that an American high school student would have.
I want to hear actually the nuts and bolts of
You want
your
the whole story?
story.
Okay.
I
Okay,
want
okay.
the whole story, because I think it's really important, because often we see you on the TEDx stage, or we see your album, and it's hard for us to imagine all the steps you took to get there. Because like you said, coming from a small city in Slovakia without the resources you would need to get to where you are today. So how did you get there? You created that for yourself. And so to give people that context and to maybe inspire them, if they're feeling stuck, they want to do something, but they don't know how, I think it's helpful to hear, what were the things that you did as a very young person that helped you achieve your goals?
All right. So I literally just, there was no AI back then. So I just Googled how to sing jazz. And there was a website, I think at that time, how to practice jazz or something like that, that I was on just all the time. And yeah, I found any online resources I could. Um, I think even YouTube was sort of just beginning back then. That there weren't really like the long form educational videos, so it was mostly text for me. And then I found uh, one band in Bratislava, where I had to, I would have to take a bus and go there, that I could play with a little bit, and they would teach me like sort of on the bandstand some basics. They were kind enough to take me without knowing anything. Yeah, but that was sort of it. And by Googling, I found out about Berklee College of Music. Now, I had no idea what this place is. I just saw that a lot of the textbooks that I like that I found online, they said Berkeley Press, and I liked the ones that said Berkeley Press. They were very clear. They were easy to navigate. And so I was like, okay, what is this Berkeley Press, Berkeley? And so I looked it up as well. And, I found out it's a school, that it's huge. And I signed up on their mailing list, and I would just get, emails of their students, of what they're doing. And at this time, I was studying performing arts in Slovakia. I already knew I wanted to do music. There was no way for me to do singing. It was either classical singing, opera, or it was theater. Those were the two closest. So I chose theater, even though I had no acting background. Ended up writing music for some of the school plays. And while in school, I was doing all of this research on Berkeley and on jazz. And then I noticed they are doing auditions all around the world. And they were doing one in Paris around the time of my 18th birthday, which 18 is a big deal. It's like the 21 of the US. And so I asked my mom if we could take this low-cost flight to Paris for a weekend on this particular date. I didn't tell her I want to audition, anything. I signed up for the audition. I paid the fee. I think I had some side job at the time, so I could pay the fee. And I was planning to go. And just on the plane, I told her, I'm auditioning for this school. Don't tell anybody. There's no way I'm getting in. I think it's very expensive. I don't think we can pay for it at all. I really want to do it because I've been following them for a long time. And she's like, oh, okay, let's do it. She's very supportive. Yes, I auditioned. I remember feeling awful about it, crying on the Paris train, feeling like there was no point in coming here. Why was I doing this? What was I thinking? And then I got home, and a few months later, I got an email that I was accepted. But I didn't get any scholarship. Which, for my family, first of all, nobody in my family speaks English. So besides me, I spoke some English at the time. So to, move abroad without knowing any adults who can actually help me set up housing or, know anything about the health insurance or anything. I mean, it was a pretty wild decision, but I really wanted to do it anyway. And I remember talking to my mom again, and she was like, well, look, the money is somewhere. We just need to find a way to get it here. And then I was like, okay, well, where could the money be? And so I did what I always did. I Googled the list of richest people in Slovakia, according to Forbes. And I emailed every person on that list. I just said, I'm Ester, I'm 18, I'm from this town, I got into this college. And I said, when I come back, when I graduate, I want to start a college like this in Slovakia. That's my plan, so that the future generation doesn't have to go through this, which, I had no idea what that would take, but I just wanted to, that's what I want to do. And of course, very few people replied. But I got a few responses, and I got a few people to talk to me, and somehow I had enough for one semester. Which I thought that's all that's going to happen. I'll fly to the US for one semester, I fly back, and then figure it out. But then after one semester, I found another person for my second semester, and then the college supported me fully. Based on my grades and everything else that I was doing at the time. So my mom was definitely a big part of the story already at that time. Now that I'm saying it, I'm realizing it again. And the college it wasn't quite a college that I started at first, but every summer I would go home. I found a few friends who were my age and also had a similar story that they were studying music abroad. And we decided to just share whatever we learned that year with local musicians. So we did these summer workshops that were slowly getting longer and longer. And we started doing more and more activities. And over the years, the organization got bigger. And actually this year, we gave for our first 2 Berkeley scholarships to Slovakians. We have this collaboration with Berkeley, which was such a full circle moment for me, because I realized that, it has really changed for the next generation, that all the things I had to do, likely nobody else from the country will ever have to do, because if they are interested in studying abroad, they just come to us, and there's a chance that they might get the scholarship.
That's amazing. And it's just your resilience and your just sheer will are just so incredibly inspiring. I love hearing those stories. And as you said, I mean, you didn't know. And by the way, you ended up on a Forbes list, I have to say. You ended up on the 30 under 30 list. And I think that your grit and your willingness to put yourself out there to people that were already on those lists that you found through Forbes was very telling as to what your future would be. And so if someone's listening and they're feeling like in that stage where I want to build something but I'm not there, and they're feeling, sometimes we get stuck in feelings of shame for where we are now, or I can't, I'm not enough. And it's like, you're just not there yet. So what are we going to do today to get us one step closer? Who are we going to email? And I think I've read that you would email, 10 people a day. That's what it takes. I can tell you, we had recently a book come out, and we're fundraising for animal shelters here in the United States. And I don't even want to think about how many emails I send a day, but it's worth it, and it makes an impact. So what is the thing, we talked about this earlier, what is the thing that you're motivated to do? And if you lean into that, then you have the energy and the will and the grit to really throw yourself into it. And as you mentioned, once you came home, you were able to start really paying back on that promise to build something. So you talked a little bit about Music Beyond Borders. What are your goals with Music Beyond Borders moving forward now, all these years after starting this adventure, going to Berkeley, finishing your studies?
Well, I think the big goal there, is still to have more of a full-time study available in Slovakia for our students. Yeah, but I already see so much of the impact. And at this point, it's not me running the organization anymore, or my 2 co-founders. There's a team of people doing it who are local, because as you mentioned, I fly back and forth between New York and Slovakia. So actually now, after we were able to achieve this big partnership with Berkeley, I feel like my focus is shifting a little bit more towards my music and my family, and the combination of the two, rather than focusing on education in Slovakia. So while I'm still involved, I think there's now a new generation of people leading the organization, and I'm very curious to where they will take it next.
That's exciting. But in true creator, builder, dreamer fashion, then you get another idea and then you run with it. So we've already talked about your new album that's really capturing this time that you have with your mom, and how much love and effort and care is going into this chapter of your life. But also recently you posted about, I believe it was your husband, kind of saying, what if we create a festival here in this beautiful land that we have here in Slovakia to help us further our mission? Tell us about that, how that came to be, and what are the goals and steps you're taking with that project?
Hmm. So my husband is from even smaller village than my hometown, right next to it, and we met in New York City because he was studying there at the time as well, business management, and he came back to lead a fruit farm that his parents started. So he's a fruit farmer, and I'm an artist, and we keep trying to combine these two things together in all kinds of ways. And I think in the future we want to do more of that, of retreats in in nature, and sort of this farm to table approach, and creative living and all kinds of things like that. But we're starting with this festival. So besides fruit, they also have grapes, which means they have wine. So we did this wine tasting event. It was actually last night, combined with a music festival. So that means I get to bring all of my favorite artists from the country. We had four bands there, and he gets to bring all of his favorite collaborators from the region with all kinds of food, and of course there's all the wine he makes, and it's just a nice community get together. There were around 700 people there, and an opportunity for us to connect with people and connect through music and through food, and build something together as a couple as well.
That is so fun. I really want to try to come the next time you have a festival. That sounds
Please
amazing.
do. Yeah,
That sounds amazing. And so one thing we haven't even mentioned, because there's so much to chat about with you. I'm pulling up in my notes now because there's no way I can keep all the amazing places you've performed in my head. It's not physically possible. So, as we mentioned, you went to Berkeley, and then since you graduated with your degree in jazz composition, you've performed on so many amazing stages. So, and this is to lead in, I want to know what you're doing next. But before we talk about that, we have to talk about where we've been. So, you've performed in Flagley Hall in Brussels, Wuhan, Concert Hall in China, the Piano Man in New Delhi. You perform regularly at Cafe Vivaldi in New York City, which might be easier for me to find you, but I really want to go on a farm in Slovakia because that sounds way like stunning of an experience. Both stunning. Catch her wherever you can, guys. And then you've sung with incredible other musicians, Dave Holland, Lionel Richie, Luciana Souza. And yeah, you've sung for the Slovak president. I mean, you've had the opportunity to share your craft with audiences across the world. And as you've mentioned, you also have had very impactful performances that I really want to mention, where you organize concerts in prisons, homeless shelters. You've taught a homeless women choir, which again, thinking back to your beginnings, learning singing and community in a church choir, and have co-led regular workshops for teenagers in psychiatric hospitals. How did you get started on those outreach efforts amongst all of the other things that you're doing? And I'm wondering what gifts they have given to you as a person and as an artist, and how it's shaping your mission moving forward.
To be honest with you, I think if it was possible to make a living by just performing my music for in the situations that you mentioned, like for homeless shelters and hospitals, etc., that's what I would want to do, because to me there's just so much more meaning to it. I mean, we had recently a tour, where we performed in this very fancy jazz club in Vienna. And just before that, we performed sort of in the middle of nowhere in Slovakia. And everybody in the band, we were all saying that it just felt so much more meaningful in that tiny town in the middle of nowhere, because the audience values it so much more, and the connection is just so much deeper, while in the clubs, I think we often, and including me, I'm a professional musician, I often myself get stuck in the like kind of judging the music and seeing what I like, what I don't, looking at the influences of what I'm seeing, rather than just sitting there and connecting, which is what music is really about, I think. So to really answer your question, I think I do this because that is why I do music, and I think it brings me to the true meaning of it, and I would never want to lose that in my career. And yeah, I just genuinely enjoy watching the transformation. I mean, you mentioned the women's chorus is what we call it. It was chorus for women currently without home at that time in Boston, and just to provide these women with a space they can go to regularly, where someone checks in on them, to give them a chance to perform, to put on makeup, to wear some nice clothes, to feel like they have a voice that somebody listens to be able to harmonize with other women in a similar situation. There was just so much about it that felt so meaningful, and I felt so honored to be a part of that.
That's beautiful. I'm so grateful for that work you do, because it is so meaningful. And in those moments, it breaks down the barrier, because I think in some of our more polished conversations, right, polished shows and polished performances, there's a barrier there. And not only are you taking down the barrier between you and your audience, you are making your audience a part of it. And that's what we really love about music, right? You're not a musician just because you love listening to music. You see the gifts of creating music and what it's done in your life and the bonds. I wanted to chat about that because you recently posted about the things after you've toured that you think back and think, if I were going back, I'd be mindful of. And since you are an educator, I was hoping you could share with our audience some advice or things to consider if they're musicians and they're thinking about going on tour. They're thinking about sharing their music online, creating an album. What are some things from the perspective you have now as being a seasoned artist with all of your experiences that you would say, you know what, if I was mentoring someone, these would be the top 3-5 things that I would say to just be mindful of as you are curating your experience as a musician?
Mhm. Well, I will say that it is not easy these days to do one's own music and to go on tour, and to not go broke doing it as at the same time. That's a big part of it. Um, but what I would start with is the people in the band. I think that's something that sometimes musicians forget, just how much time they will spend with the band members, because it's very different to play one show together and do some rehearsals, and then to spend weeks in one car, stressed, tired, hungry. It can get very difficult if it's not there with the right people. So I would put a lot of thought into that, to make sure that there are not only great musicians but also people who make these kinds of experiences ideally easier, not harder. And then another thing, asking for support in all kinds of ways, I think is really important, because in my position, it's so much. I'm singing, which by itself is a demanding physical thing to do. I'm singing my own music, so that means that it's quite demanding emotionally as well. And I really care, because I put a lot of time and a lot of heart into creating it. uh, and then on top of that, I am managing everything, meaning, where are we parking, when are we unloading the instruments, uh, what do we do once we unload them, where do we eat, can the place where we eat accommodate everybody's dietary restrictions, where do we sleep? Is everybody sleeping comfortably? What do we do if someone's not sleeping comfortably and they're cranky the next day? There's so much to think about. And then there's all the marketing side, promoting the actual show, selling merch, and it's just impossible for a band leader to do all that. So asking for help, I think, is very, very important. And it can be from other band members, asking somebody, can you be in charge of loading the car every time, making sure we didn't forget anything, and doing the Tetris of fitting everything in. Asking somebody else maybe to drive, maybe putting someone in charge of merch, and they could be fans, it could be a friend, it could be somebody is coming to see the show, maybe you can give them a free ticket. But just unloading is really, really important, because without it, what's going to happen, and it happened for me to me a few times, is at the end of the day, I was tired, I was sick, because there was so much, and I did not perform well. And all that effort felt like it went to waste because the one thing that I actually came there to do, I wasn't able to do well because I was done. So that's the advice I would give young musicians.
Can I do a cliff note on the constructive criticism that you just gave yourself? So I think you recently shared a really powerful video that I loved. It really resonated with me about how there are times when we don't feel we perform well. And that doesn't have to be on a stage. It can be a conversation. It can be when you're in a job interview, even a conversation with your kid where you're like, man, I did not perform well in that conversation and I'm the grown up. So we often really are hard on ourselves about how we show up. And that's because we care and it's important to be thoughtful. But one of the things you pointed out in your very touching, helpful video was so you had really been a harsh critic of a performance you'd done. And then you listened back to it. And when you had that time and space and listened back to it, you were actually much more focused on the things, this went well. Okay. Yeah, this went well. Okay, this went well. And it seemed like there was much less focus pulled to anything that may or honestly maybe not have gone bad. I know there are times for me in a podcast where I'll think, gosh, I wish I had done this. And then I'll listen back and I'll think, no, it was fine. It's just in our head, we have so much going on that's not coming out. We're not sharing with the world and so much more judgment. But I loved how you took the time to say, even as a performer, even when you're on stage and there's audience and there's high stakes and you've judged yourself, take a pause. If you've got playback, play it back and give yourself that gift of grace and understanding that, it probably wasn't nearly as bad as you thought it was. And it may actually have been kind of great because of some fluctuations from the ideal. I think that could actually make art even better sometimes.
I think you're absolutely right. I think, and a lot of art. I'm sure not only artists, but a lot of artists struggle with this. Judging themselves pretty harshly, and in the moment, that's another part of the judgment that it's just impossible to have the right judgment in that specific moment.
Yep, that's why they'd never put you on a panel where you were performing, right? They'd never have you judge for an event that you were a part of. So yeah, I think that's a great invitation. Even if you're very analytical and you have high expectations for yourself, as does Ester, it's okay. Give yourself some grace. You're doing great. And the mistakes that we make today, they're just opportunities for us to build tomorrow. But it's honestly probably not as bad as someone is thinking about themselves in the moment. Your music is so beautiful. I urge, if you haven't heard Ester's music yet, go listen. What's the best way that you like to have your fans and new listeners reach out to you? There's so, in this world of, as you mentioned, Google and AI, there's so many ways for people to connect with you. What, in your opinion, is the best way for people to learn more about you and your music?
I'm currently very active on Instagram, so I think that's a good way to connect or message as well and kind of know what I'm up to. And then you can actually listen to the music on all the streaming platforms. But if you'd like to allow me to do more of what I do, then Bandcamp and actually buying the music for a few dollars might be the best way to do that, so that I can keep creating more albums.
And then you own the music. Gosh, remember when we used to go to the store and we'd buy a physical thing and it was ours, and the pride we have. I'm a little older than you, so you didn't do this, but going and you had a VHS and you're like, oh, I have this movie, or you had the little tape and you're like, oh, this is my tape. It's mine. And you remembered that for 20, 30 years, the first one you got, or for your birthday, you went and you bought this CD and it was yours. And now people really miss out on that. So, when you're on the airplane and there is no Wi-Fi, because they promised you there'd be Wi-Fi, but yet again, there is no Wi-Fi. Guess what? If you purchased Ester's music, you can still listen to it and not have to listen to whatever the company has decided, the few little options they're going to give you on their music composition that they have. So that's a great thing to have and to listen to. And I really feel, from what I have heard of the music you have coming out, the project that is about your mom, that will be such a healing experience and a connecting experience for so many people across the world who are having, as families, navigating similar circumstances. Is there a title for this project yet, or is that forthcoming?
Not yet. I have a few in
Not
mind.
yet.
But I'm
Okay.
not sure yet.
We will wait patiently. We will watch your Instagram. What's the handle people should follow for Instagram?
It's my name, my first and last name. That is probably in the description of this episode.
Yes, absolutely. So we will make sure that that is in the show notes so that everyone can, and it's the spelling. So make sure you do look at the show notes, make sure you're following the right person. But yeah, Ester is a beautiful person to follow. I can't wait to hear the music and just to see all of the amazing things you're doing that are not only inspired by your personal life, but that are inspiring others to rebuild their futures with outreach, as well as the work that you've done with bringing, taking away the borders in Slovakia and making sure that future artists are able to connect and learn just as you did through creating that opportunity for yourself. And like you said, with your mom's help. So inspiring. I'm so grateful that you were here today on Talks with Dr. Shafer to share your story. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Shafer.
And I want to thank our storytellers for being here. You inspire us every day, and we're glad to be just a small part of your journey. As always, stay safe and take care. I'll talk to you soon.